It's not. Your connection isn't okay. Unstable. All right. Looks like we're connected now. These are some of the things I worked through before you guys get here. For those listening at home, today is the 14th of September. This is, of course, the 10 a.m. intro class. So I want to start off showing this video. It's one of my favorite ones that's in this collection. And oh, it is really actually put the light switch over what they need to be, which is crazy. Yeah.
I want to start with the game.
Can you all hear that?
To win this game, all you have to do is see the reality that's in front of you as it really is. So you have two panels here of colored dots.
Your way.
One of those dots is the same in the two panels. Okay? And you have to tell me which one.
Okay. Two boards. Obviously, one black background, one's a white background. And there are various colors on both boards. And there is one single color that is the same in both backgrounds. Okay? So I want you to look at these colors and figure out, for instance, this is a green. Does this green match this green? Does this blue match that? Does this orangey red match that? Purple, gray. I think that's it. Okay? And then we're going to take a vote. And I know it's a little bit early in the morning for esoteric philosophical questions, but we're going to answer the question, who among you actually sees reality as it is? Okay? So, everybody made their choice. Which color? I'll make it easy. It's only one color. You ready? Okay. The green color. How many? You can only get to vote once, by the way. Who thinks it's the green color? One. The orangey red color. Anybody think that's? No. Green. How about the purple? Anybody think the purple is the same color? Two. I don't even know what to name this color. Brown. Anybody think that color is on the other one? No. Blue. How about the blue? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. How many think are right? 1, 2. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10. 17 people in here. How did that happen? Did I miss a color? Everybody voted for green, wanted to vote for green, orange, red, purple, 2, brown, 0, blue, 5, gray, 11. Oh, 2. Okay, some people don't want to vote. 2 timid. As they say in the Philippines, I'm shy. Okay? Well, we'll find out. You'll be surprised.
Now narrow it down to the gray one, the green one, and say the orange one. So by a show of hands, start with the easiest one. Show of hands, how many people think it's the gray one?
Okay, it's kind of hard to see. Looks like maybe less than a third, somewhere on the third.
How many people think it's the green one? And how many people think it's the orange one? So pretty evenly split. So let's find out what the reality is. Here is the golden one. Here is the green one. And here's the gray one. So for all of you saw that, you're complete realists.
You saw it? Gray. Oop, somebody else over here with gray. Now, for the rest of us who do not see that, and of course I've shown this video a million times, I know it's the gray one, but there's no way, no matter what I do, I cannot justify the gray in one and the gray in the other being the same color. Now that you guys know that, I mean, did anybody even think that it might have been gray? Okay, so you made a choice. Whatever your choice was more convincing than gray. That could be upsetting to some of us, especially if you're in the hard sciences, what we call the hard, not hard because they're difficult, but some people find them difficult. Some people find psychology difficult because they think it is too much of a gray area. Oh, okay. I say, I hope you had your caffeine this morning because even though this is a short video, it's only 19 minutes long, with a lot of philosophical issues that I will point out to you. Maybe you'll find one yourself. He talks about seeing reality. Out of the class of 17, we have 2 people who see reality the way that it is. And I am not surprised by that.
All right? So this is pretty amazing, actually, isn't it? Because nearly every living system has evolved the ability to detect light in one way or another. So for us, seeing color is one of the simplest things that the brain does. And yet, even at this most fundamental level, context is everything.
Okay, notators. Context is everything. Seeing is one of the simplest tasks we do. We open our eyes, the image goes into our eye, comes in upside down, flips it back right, sends the message down to the optic nerve, goes into the part of the brain that discerns in your visual cortex and tells you what you're looking at. You're looking at a red dot. You're not looking at a red toaster. You're not looking at a red Volkswagen. You're not looking at a red wood tree. You're looking at a red dot. And I'll make an assumption in here. Let's do it the opposite way. It's not meant to embarrass anybody. Is there anyone in here that is not bilingual? Doesn't have two languages? Ah, good guess on my part. So, those, since all of you have at least two, some probably have three or more languages, you know that in one language we agree that this object here, we're going to call it a chair or maybe a desk. And in Spanish, we would call it something else because it would sound like a chair or desk. What other language you speak has got a word for that object. And so you ask yourself, philosophically, is this a chair or is it not a chair? Well, it's a chair because those who are English speaking have decided we're just going to agree that we're going to call this a chair and not an octopus. Okay? Octopus is something else. Don't get confused. This is a chair. And we also give to it certain properties. A chair is used for sitting on. It's not something you throw in a baseball game and try to hit it. It's not something that you throw into the water with a line attached to it to try to catch fish. No, it's a chair. It's used for sitting and maybe some other issues, but something related to that.
But I'm going to talk about, it's not that context but why this context because it's answering that question that tells us not only why we see what we do, but who we are as individuals and who we are as a society.
Whoa! Now that's heavy. Who we are and what we do in society. Really? Does that make sense? You know, these masks. In Asian countries, people have worn masks for a long time. They wear a mask generally as a courtesy. If they're feeling sick, they don't want to infect anybody else, so they put a mask on. I spent time in the Philippines and some other countries briefly. I always encounter people who have masks on. The first time it happened, I thought, wow, that's weird. Why is this person wearing a mask? I mean, just got discharged out of the hospital or what? And I realized one time I was looking at a condo, and the lady that was going to let me stay there was in with her helper cleaning up to make sure it was spick and span. So she comes through the door and she has a mask on, and I guess the look in my eyes was like, oh no, I just interrupted somebody that's in cancer treatment or something. And she immediately said, no, I'm not sick. I just have the mask on because I don't like the smell of this ammonia stuff that we're cleaning with. So she was all apologetic. So the point is, we make assumptions about people wearing masks. Now we've got this COVID stuff going on, and it could mean something else to us. So Bo Lotto here is not exaggerating when he says we see things, we hear things, we use any of our five senses to tell us something about ourselves and other people in our world. And we do.
But first we have to ask another question, which is, what is color for? Instead of telling you what it showed you. What you see here is a jungle scene, and you see the surfaces according to the amount of light those surfaces reflect. Now, can any of you see the predator that's about to jump out of you?
Okay. This is a picture that has been filtered by the amount of light that came in. In other words, these lighter things here, there's a lot of light on them, and in these darker areas, there's not much light in them. That he's just contrasting the amount of light. So, in this picture, and I know some of you are fairly far away from the board, this projection, can anyone see an animal? It's a big animal, and it's, if you want to get up and see it from where you're sitting, please feel free to do so. And as Bo says, if you don't see him in 1 or 2 seconds, it's too late. You're dead. Anybody see anything? You want to take a guess? Where do you think it might be? Yeah, go on to show me. Yeah, what do you see? Where is it? You see a head or a body or what? Okay. Anybody else see anything? All right. I guess we're like that.
And if you haven't seen it yet, you're dead. Alright? Can anyone see it? Anyone? No? Now let's see the surfaces according to the quality of light. Now you see it.
The quality of a light, not just the quantity. Sure, these are still brighter because there's a lot of light out there, and that's why they light up. Dark area, not much in there. This guy is dark. You can't even see his eyes. And you were close. You were saying like in this area, and you didn't see his eyes. It's about the only thing you can see because the dark is sort of blends. So, Bo was asking us, why, environmentally, evolutionary-wise, why is it important to see color? Well, he's emphasizing that evolutionary changes favor processes that increase your ability to survive. So going back to white sands, if you're a brown horned toad and you have offspring of several different colors of brown, from dark brown to light brown, the likelihood that your light brown child is going to survive and your dark child is not going to survive is based on your skin color. So we have evolved in our ability to discriminate colors because it is convenient to us to have done that. And as he will tell you in a minute, all 5 senses tell us, our brain, what they tell us, because it's convenient to know that. If you've got a sore muscle and you put on a heating pad and you feel that heat is comforting to you and helps your muscle relax. It helps draw blood to the area that you have the heating pad on, and that blood helps your body heal your injury. But if it's too hot, it's unpleasant.
So, color enables us to see the similarities and differences between surfaces according to the full spectrum of light they reflect. But what you've just done is in many respects mathematically impossible. Why? Because, as Barclay tells us, we have no direct access to our physical world other than through our senses. And the light that falls onto our eyes is determined by multiple things in the world, not only the color of objects, but also the color of their illumination and the color of the space between us and those objects. You vary any one of those parameters, and you'll change the color of the light that falls onto your eye. This is a huge problem because it means that the same image could have an infinite number of possible number of sources. So you should be learning.
Highly philosophical. If you alter the intensity, the hue, all these things, it can affect what your eyes see. Not what reality is, not the gray circle. The gray circle is the gray circle. All of you except you two looked at that gray circle like I do and say, no way in hell those two are equal. One looks lighter, one looks darker. They don't look the same to us. And how you two can look at it and go, no, they look the same. It's amazing to me. It always amazes me. It's never more than one or two, maybe three. The rest of us just don't see it that way, but yet that's the way it is. Now, here we have an object that's depicted as a three-dimensional object on a two-dimensional screen. The shape, the size, the color, the dimension, the orientation in space is exactly the same. If you were to come up with a ruler and start measuring this distance or figuring out what this angle is right here, it's exactly the same as that angle. Somebody's drawing it. See, somebody tried to do it before we got here. Drawing. So these lines are all the same. They're exactly the same.
Imagine that this is the back of your arm, okay? And these are two projections from the world. They're identical in every single way. Identical in shape, size, spectral content. They are the same as far as your eye is concerned. And yet, they come from completely different sources. The one on the right comes from a yellow source, in shadow. One is facing the left, viewed through a pinkish medium.
Shadows have a lot to do with things. This one, the body of what it is yellow. You can see that because the rest of the block, you can see it's not filtered through the pink filter is actually yellow. But when you put a pink filter in front of it, and I don't think we would consider that in the shadow, it looks white. And then here's the same piece over here, which is a orange color seen through this prism here, which appears to be, I don't know, hard to say what color this is. Well, I think you can tell us. And this one definitely is in the shadow, because you can see this is the normal color of orange, and here it is darker because the light is shining from this direction and throwing a shadow. And our eyes pick this up just like that. Bam!
The one on the left comes from an orange surface, or the direct light, facing to the right, viewed through a sort of a bluish medium.
Bluish.
Giving rise to the exact same retinal information, and yet it's only the retinal information that we get. So how on earth do we even see it? So if you remember anything in this next 18 years, remember this, that the light that falls onto your eye, sensory information, is meaningless, because it could mean literally anything.
Another philosophical statement. The light that appears to your eyes to tell you what's going on in the outside world is basically meaningless. Why is it meaningless? Because it could mean anything. If you just alter whether it's in the shadow, out of the shadow, whether there's a filter in between, and you can change the color. Wow, that's pretty heavy for 10:30 in the morning.
And what's true for sensory information is true for information in general. There's no inherent meaning in information.
No, if it's true for seeing, it's true for the other four senses as well.
What we So how do we see? Well, we see by learning to see.
How do we see? We see by learning to see. What is the name for this object in Spanish? Silla. English, chair. You speak a different language than Spanish or English? What other language do you speak? Korean. What's the word for chair in Korean? Okay, there's 3 words that mean the same thing. So, how is it that we know what it is in Korean, Spanish, English, Italian, German, whatever? It's because we who speak that language say, we have been trained to say this is a chair or it's a desk. Nobody calls it a train. Nobody calls it a cloud. Nobody calls it a rock. Because those are words for objects that we agree upon or something else. So there's no inherent reason to call it a chair other than we agreed upon. Let's see it.
So the brain evolved the mechanisms for finding patterns, finding relationships in information, and associating those relationships with a behavioral movement.
So, Bo just told us that we learn to use our 5 senses. And what we do is called association. We put a meaning to that silla, chair. The meaning is it's something that people sit on. So we're going to call it a chair. And that's how we build language and we build concepts. We start small and move up. When we were talking about neural pathways, I mentioned most of you who have had somebody in your family that speaks Spanish, they start asking little kids whether they want papas, meaning literally, do you want potatoes? But figuratively, do you want something to eat? And then as children grow, you don't ask them whether they want papas unless you really are asking them about potatoes, but you ask them about whether they want frijoles, the burrito, chalupa, whatever, carne asada. Because those are words that represent objects in the world that the kid now knows they could not comprehend or know when they're 2 months old. You're lucky to get the association. The association is whatever I just mixed up in this little jar, I'm going to call it papas. So for your sake, because you're only 3, 4, 5 months old, that means food. So I'm giving you food. So you associate the word papas or ¿quieres agua? Or if you're a little bit older, ¿quieres cerveza? You understand what those words mean.
A significance by interacting with the world. We're very aware of this in the form of more cognitive activities like language. So I'm going to give you some letter strings, and I want you to read them out for me if you can.
What does it say? Can you read this? You're not reading this.
What? How are you reading? Half the letters are missing, right? There's no A prior reason why an H has to go between that W and A, but you put one there. Why? Because in the statistics of your past experience, it would have been useful to do so. So you do so again. And yet you don't put a letter after that first T? Well, because it was at useful in the past. So you can,
So I'll try to prove this, put the image on the board. It always irritates me because you don't have much room to do it. It's right over here. Whataburger, which is spelled okay. How long have you lived in Southwest? How long have you lived there? 3 years? How long have you lived there? About the same? This is this area. No, in this area. Yeah, how many years? Yeah. Okay. Anybody from another part of the country that recently moved here? Okay. Did you guys know it was Whataburger? If you're from Ohio and you just signed up for this semester, you may not know what Whataburger is. The rest of us who've lived here for a long time know that it's a hamburger chain, and it's called What A Burger, and it's all crunched together. So you can see that somebody coming from another part of the country would have filled that out as what burger, probably. But because you've been in El Paso for a while, you recognize that is a hamburger chain we have here. So it proves Bo Lotto's point. Which is, we see things because we have learned it, and it's convenient for us to agree that a chair is a chair, etc.
so let me show you how quickly our brains can redefine reality, even at the simplest thing the brain does, which is color. So
Our brains redefine reality. For you two who see the gray, don't worry about it. It's the rest of us who can't see reality.
So if I have the lights down up here, I want you to first notice that those two desert seeds are physically the same. One is simply the flipping of the other. Okay? Now I want you to look at that dot between the green and the red. Okay? And I want you to stare at that dot. Don't look anywhere else. We're going to look at that for about 30 seconds. There's a bit of a killer that needs to be talk.
Okay, I'll give you more than 30 seconds. Look at that dot starting down. Don't deviate your eyes from it. Stare at it, and do not deviate your eyes from it.
Okay? But I really want you to learn, and I'll tell you, don't look anywhere else. And I'll tell you what's happening inside your head. Your brain is learning, and it's learning on the right side of this visual field is under red illumination. The left side of this visual field is under green illumination. That's what it's learning. Now, when I tell you, I want you to look at the dot between those two deserts. So why don't you do that now?
Look at that dot right there. Do these two images look the same? No. They did in the beginning, right? They don't now. Why is that? Because Bo Lotto just told you. Your brain is learning, oh, I got this. I'm staring at this white dot in the middle, and everything to the right is in a red background, and everything in the green is on a green background. One thing you might not know, unless you read the chapter already, is what you see with your right eye actually goes over to the left brain, and what you see with your left eye actually goes over to the right brain. They crisscross. Then when you take those colors and look down here, your brain remembers, oh, wait a minute. This is under a red background, and this is under a green background, and you see it different.
You have the lights up again? So I take it from your response, they don't look the same anymore, right? Why? Because your brain is seeing that same information as if the right one is still under red light and the left one is still under green light. That's your new normal. Okay? So what does this mean for context? It means I can take these two identical squares and I can put them in light and dark surrounds. Now the one on the dark surround looks light and the light surround.
Do you agree, speaking of gray on dark and light, is this gray the same as this gray? If you're in doubt, we'll go back.
Right? Why? Because your brain is seeing that same information as if the right one is still under red light and the left one is still under green light. That's your new normal. Okay? So what does this mean for context? It means I can take these two identical squares and
Two identical squares. Are they identical? Yes. So now that we've established that,
can put them in light and dark surrounds. Now the one on the dark surround looks
they're
like
still the same.
What's significant is not simply the light and dark surrounds that matter. It's what those light and dark surrounds that meant in the past. So I'll show you what I mean. Here we have that exact same illusion. We have two identical tiles on the left, one in the dark surround, one in the light surround, and the same thing over on the right. Now what I'm going to do is we'll reveal those two scenes, but I'm not.
So, there's your two gray panels. There's your two gray panels. This one is in a white background. This one's in a gray. This one's in a dark background. This one's in a white. So they're the same pair. These two gray are the same. These two gray are the same.
I'm going to change anything within those boxes except the meaning. See what happens to perception. Notice that on the left, the two tiles look really completely opposite. One.
This looks white. This looks dark. Even darker gray than what you saw before. This one looks gray, and this one looks, I think, to most people, gray, but maybe a little bit darker.
Very white and one very dark. Right? Whereas on the right, the two tiles look nearly the same. And yet, there's still one on the dark surround and one on the light surround. Why? Because if the tile in that shadow were in fact in shadow, and reflecting the same amount of light to your eye as the one outside the shadow, it would have to be more reflective.
So, this is how we learn to see. We know, because our eyeballs give us information, everything under this table is in a shadow. We can see the shadow. So, if this color of gray is hitting our eyes in the shadow, then the object that we're looking at has to be a lighter shade of gray. Because in shadows, which doesn't have as much light, the object that's reflecting what little light is in there has to be pretty whitish to reflect that much color to our eye while it's in the shadow. And as far as the tile that's on the outside, that's in the direct light, it's the same. It's the same. It's the same. So the only thing that's changed is that guy right there. And the reason it's changed is because it's in a shadow. So we tell our eyes that's what that tile looks like. Now, you've only seen the dot experiment one time, but I'm telling you, I've seen it hundreds of times, and I cannot tell my brain to see that gray dot on the black background is the same as the gray dot on the white background. I cannot cognitively change my perception. And I bet we could sit here till the end of class and try to tell ourselves that that square is actually the same as this. We're not going to be able to convince our brain of it. Our brain is on automatic pilot. It's already learned what it means.
So you see that. Whereas on the right, the information is consistent with those two tiles being under the same light. If they're under the same light, it's like the same amount of light for eye. It's reflected. So you see that. Which means we can bring all this information together to create some incredibly strong illusions. This is what I made a few years ago. And you'll notice you see a dark brown tile at the top.
Dark brown here, orange tile there. They're actually all the same color. Hard to believe? Yes, of course it is.
And the bright orange tile at the side. That is your perceptual reality. The physical reality is that those two tiles are the same. Here you see 4 gray tiles on your left, 7 gray tiles on the right. I'm not going to change those tiles at all, but I'm going to reveal the rest of the scene and see what happens to your perception.
Now we're looking at blue tiles. And over here, what are we looking at? Yellow?
4 blue tiles on the left are gray. The 7 yellow tiles on the right are also gray. They are the same, okay? And believe me, it's what you're in.
There they are. And then we
What's
put them
true
through the
for
filters.
color is also true for complex perceptions of motion. So here we have a diamond. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it here and I'm going to spin it. And for all of you will see the pointer spin in this direction. And I want you to keep looking at it.
It's going clockwise.
Move your eyes around, you grade things of one eye, and suddenly
So, while you look at that, going clockwise, which you now know you saw him twist it, and you can see it going clockwise, same way the face of the clock goes. Now, stare at some part, pick a part, blink, and then continue to stare, and then see if you can answer the question, is it spinning counterclockwise or clockwise? And then do it again. Every time you stare at something, blink, and then look at it again, it usually changes and goes the opposite direction, which is crazy because you know it's going clockwise the entire time. If you're confused about it, you can cheat. Look at this piece of string, and that'll tell you that it's going clockwise, even though when you look at the body, it looks like it's going counterclockwise.
what's it? It starts spinning in the opposite direction.
Blink.
Yes, raise your hand if you got that.
I got it.
Yes. Keep blinking. Every time you blink, it'll switch. Right? So I can ask you, which direction is it rotating? How do you know?
Because I cheated. I watched this twice. That's how I know.
Your brain doesn't know because both are equally likely. So depending on where it looks, it flips between the two possibilities.
All right, we're going to skip the bees. The lesson here is bees do the same thing. Bees go looking for honey based on color. You put a filter in front of it, they figure out where the honey is, and then they remember.
So how can we take this incredible capacity of plasticity of the brain and get people to experience the world differently? For one,
Plasticity of the brain, he said. this wonderful plasticity of the brain.
The ways that we do it in my studio is we translate the light and the sound. We enable people to hear the visual world. And they can navigate the world using computers. Here's David on the right, and he's holding a camera. On the left is what his camera sees. And you see there's a line, faint line on
Hard to see, but here's the faint line. It goes across the entire picture.
across that image. That line is what we 32 squares. And each square, we calculate the average color, and then we just simply translate that to the sound. And now he's going to
So basically, we have 32 squares on this line. We go all the way across. And this camera that he's holding, it calculates the average color in each of these squares. Then they assign an instrument to those colors. So you can watch what happens.
turn around, close his eyes.
Now you can see the line a little bit better.
With his eyes closed.
There it is. So now his eyes are closed. He's got the camera in his hand. He's trying to find this plate. And you can see the floor obviously has squares in it in different colors. So they're going to emit a different sound. A higher sound when it hits the white plate.
He finds it.
So by elimination, he finds where the plate is.
Amazing, right? So not only can we create a prosthetic for the visually impaired, but we can also investigate how people literally make sense of the world. But we can also do something else. We can also make music with color. So working with kids in creating images, thinking about what my images will sound like when you listen to them. And then we translate these images. And this is one of those images. And this is a 6-year-old child.
So you tell kids, okay, this is fun. We're going to get some construction paper, cut some pieces out. We're going to stick it on another piece of paper. And we want you to put designs on it. And then we're going to run this camera over it. It's going to analyze the colors in each of these squares. And it's going to be assigned a particular orchestra-related instrument. And as we run the camera down, you will hear the differences in the music as it goes down.
Composing a piece of music.
There it is.
For 32 piece orchestra.
This is like
This is
normal,
what it sounds like.
nothing, but it's going to hit here. These two, now it's got the black, now it's got the yellow. Now it lost these two. Now it's just black and yellow. That's going to pick up the green and blue.
So a 6-year-old child. Okay? Now, what does all this mean? What this suggests is that no one is an outside observer of nature. Okay? We're not defined by our sense of competence, by this and this one. We're defined by our environment and our interaction with it. Right?
We are defined by our environment and our interaction with our environment. This should immediately make you think of my favorite little structure here, the biopsychosocial paradigm, because what Bo Lotto was telling us is we learn because of interactions between our environment and the social upon our biological principles, which are our eyeballs and our optic nerves, and all the connectors and all the parts of our eye. And the brain, which has learned what a chair is for.
Very cool. and ecology is.
Okay, here's the philosophy. No one is an outside observer of nature. You're in it. You cannot be objective. You have what you see, hear, taste, smell, touch is all been affected by your learning. There is a exercise that I will do in this class. Hopefully, if we have time. And it compares pictures of men and women, and you get to choose what you think is their level of attractiveness based on a scale of 0 being the ugliest thing you've ever seen in your life, to 10 being the most beautiful or handsome person you've seen in your life, and then figure out what might be causing you to say what you say. Each of us is defined by our ecology, which is basically our environment. Ecological things are in the social side, your environment. And our environment, our social side, is necessarily relative, historic, and empirical. So, if I ask you what is attractive to you, and I show you a picture of a person who has bones through their nose or have stretched their neck out to be inches longer than what it would have been if they had not stretched it, or really, really hanging down earlobes, or beautifully crafted scarring on the face. Every time I see Seal, the singer Seal, and I look at his scarred up face, and I look at his beautiful ex-wife, and I don't see something was going on between his ex-wife and him, other than the way he looked. Because coming from a Western culture, he looks pretty spooky. But some people are capable of overlooking those deficiencies in our culture. Other cultures would look at us and say we're deficient. You know, who among us likes to have a mate that looks like a sumo wrestler, big 450-pound dude, or 450-pound woman? They don't wrestle, as I understand it. Who would find that attractive? Not many, if any of us. But in that culture, women love sumo wrestlers. They think they're great, very attractive to them.
Necessarily relative or comparative. So, what I'd like to finish with is this over here, because what I've been trying to do is really celebrate uncertainty. Because I think only through uncertainty is there potential for understanding. So,
But only through uncertainty is there understanding. Okay, it's now 11 o'clock. Now we can talk philosophy, because we're awake. Only through uncertainty is there understanding. What does that mean? All you armchair philosophers out there? Anybody put a meaning to that statement? Now, what it means to me is, if you know reality and you know the limits of reality, then you understand reality. If I have to look at that gray dot and say it's the same color in both sides, I have to accept that, because I've seen the result of when he puts the two together, and they are the same. Do I think they're the same? Not by just looking at them. But I have to accept the reality that they are the same because I know how the experiment ends. And I don't think I'm going to run this experiment. Basically what he takes, I'll show you what it takes. This is under a yellow filter. This is under a bluish or purplish one. These 9 squares in the middle are the same color. 9 squares. So, it gets you to look at them, and you can pretty much perceive that this is a bad angle, but these are yellow, they look the same color. And so then what he does is he goes in the back, and you can see this has got the yellow filter, this has the purple filter, and he takes it off. Oh, yeah. Let's see what. Anyway, they're both the same color.
Do they look the same?
No, they don't look the same.
No. Question is that unique? And I'll leave you with that. So thank you very much.
Another philosophical question. Okay. Enough philosophy for another black and white. Okay, let's go back in time to last week, a long time ago. We're going to discuss face blindness with you, prosopagnosia. Question number 1, normal vision sensation in the absence of complete visual perception is best illustrated by A, prosopagnosia. There is nothing wrong with the vision of the person who is face blind. That little part in the optic section of your brain, a little portion here called the fusiform, that's the part of the brain that fires up when you do a functional MRI and you're looking and analyzing somebody's face. Are these two people the same people? Well, you've got that radioactive dye in your brain, that little fusiform, it's over here, it's going to fire up because it's working diligently to discriminate is those two faces are the same, or is this somebody you have seen before? And I let you know that the scientist who performed that experiment was all excited because she thought that once they put those prosopagnosia folks in a functional MRI, that she would see that fusiform portion of the brain was not functioning right. And of course, what she found out was that's not true. It is functioning. So how is it with face blind or face blind? Well, we still don't know. So that's the answer to that one. Let's use our common sense, see if we can answer some of these questions just for fun. Shelley is shopping when she runs into a friend from high school. Based on information provided in the text, how long will it take Shelley to recognize her friend? This is you going to the mall, trying to find your friend. When you see that person who is your friend, how long will it take your brain to figure out she is who she is? Is it less than a second, 2 seconds, 30 seconds or almost a minute. What's the answer? How fast is your brain or how slow does your brain work? It's not working too fast this morning. What do you think? Less than a second. You know who you know. If you get a good look at them, I'm not saying somebody half a mile away here. I'm saying somebody at the mall that's 50 feet away from you. A lot of people have the same haircut. A lot of people wear sort of the same clothes. You see somebody's face and it's a friend of yours, you're going to know it almost instantaneously. It's not a big problem. So, we don't have any criminal justice majors in here, correct? Nobody going to law school in here? Here's a problem. Eyewitness testimony. You go to 7-Eleven, you're in there getting your nitro Takis, and somebody comes in and robs the store. You get a look at the person, the police come, you're there, they ask you to come in, and maybe, or even that night, give me a description of what you saw, and maybe they could tape it. And they find a guy, and 3 weeks later, they bring him in, or maybe they take a picture of him and put him in a photo lineup and ask you to identify him. There's a book called Picking Cotton, which is a book written by a guy named Ron Cotton and a woman named Jennifer. And Jennifer, unfortunately, was a rape victim. She was a college student in a South Carolina, small South Carolina college, and she was living alone. The guy broke into her house and raped her. The lights were out, but yet there were lights, from the outside coming in. And without getting too graphic, I will tell you, she got an opportunity to look at his face for a long amount of time. So, this woman was pretty resourceful. After he'd done his nasty deed, she asked him, "Do you want a drink?" "Yeah, cool, baby." So she gets up completely naked, goes into the kitchen, and runs out the back door, screaming to the neighbors, beating on the door to let her in, and they call the cops. So what does Mr. Rapist do? He goes about a half a mile away, and goes and rapes another lady. So the police didn't have any clue as to who might have done this. So they did the normal thing. They looked at people who lived around that area that might have had a history of sexual assault. They found a guy. He was black, which the offender was. He had been convicted of statutory rape, which, if you know what that means he had a girlfriend when he was 16, who was 15, and they had sex. And her mother found out. She got pissed off. She went down to the police and said, "This guy had sex with my daughter. I want him arrested." So they did. And he got convicted. Now, is that what you and I would think of as a rape? No. But he put him in the books as a rapist. So he got in the photo lineup of 6 guys. So they brought Jennifer down and they showed her the photo lineup of 6 pictures. And she studied them long and hard. And after about how many minutes? 5 minutes, she said, it's number 6, which was Ron Cotton. So the police say, okay, thank you, we'll probably call you back. So they go arrest Ron Cotton, and they find 5 other dudes who are either in jail or just people they know that are black and male, and put them in a physical lineup, like you see on TV, lined up against the wall with the heights on the back, and they make him say what this dude said, something along the lines of, "Shut up, bitch, or I'll cut your throat." So they walk up, they say that, she hears it, she sees it, she has to choose. And she says, it's between 4 and 5, and I'm going to pick 5. And the officer says to her, well, that's good, because that's the same guy you picked out in the photo lineup. Boom. They go to court. He gets convicted. There were some mistakes on trial. He comes back, and he has another trial. There was problems there, and he, lucky for him, he got assigned a law school professor as his appellate attorney. And so he tells this guy, dude, I'm telling you from the very beginning, I did not do that, had nothing to do with this crime. But let me tell you, I'm here in South Carolina prison, and there's a guy in this prison who, when he came in and I saw him, I recognized the police composite sketch that the sketch artist made on Jennifer's description. The other woman refused to cooperate with the police. So they had a police sketching done by the police sketch artist, and Ron Cotton said, as soon as I saw that dude, that's the guy. And so I went over to him and I said, hey dude, where are you from? My town. What are you doing time for? Oh, they charged me on a bum charge of rape over in some other city. He goes, well, that's interesting, because I'm sitting in prison doing time for somebody else, and it looks just like you. And the guy says, forget it. So he tells his attorney that. And so they look into it. And sure enough, the guy had a string of convictions for forced sexual assault. He was living in the town. He was there at the time that Jennifer was raped. So they filed a motion. They brought him into court. And Jennifer was there. And everybody thought, this is going to be the day. She's going to point out the real rapist. And what does she do? She points to Ron Cotton. And she gets pissed off because her feeling was, why do you second guess me? I know who raped me. He was having oral sex with me, and I was staring at his face, thinking, I'm going to burn you, dude. I know exactly every little crevice, turn, pock mark in your face. I'm going to cooperate with the police, and I'm going to put you in prison. And good old Ron Cotton's got his transistor radio. He's listening to O.J. Simpson trial. And he finds out about DNA. So he asks his lawyer, was there any DNA in my case? He says, I don't know, we'll check. So they go back. The guy's already done 17 years in prison. One sperm cell that was viable in the rape kit that they did. Guess who it belongs to? the other guy. They went back to court, and the prosecutor said, I'm done. We made a mistake, we put the wrong guy in prison. So he walks. Jennifer is so emotionally distraught about putting the wrong guy in prison, but her mind told her beyond any doubt, the grade doesn't match the two grades. Right? And so, fortunately for her, I'll put this video on so you can watch it. A couple of psychologists explained to her how she made the mistake, how unconsciously she was pushed on to make this mistake. You gotta go to the So there's a book about it. There's an interview done by 20 or 60 minutes, whatever it is, Leslie Stahl. So the things that we learned in this class are something as simple as perception, sensation, and perception can affect people's lives literally. One of the experts in IDs, identifications, was a psychology professor at UTEP. He's now retired and teaches a class, maybe one class a semester or something. And so those of you who are psych majors, if you're interested in this area, his name is Ray Malpass. He is one of the world experts on ID. And he's written books, he's conducted all sorts of training. Guess what? El Paso Police Department, El Paso Sheriff's Office, Albuquerque Police Department, Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, none of them followed the advice of the detective who was in this case, who worked with the psychologist to come up with a better way of conducting eye-to-eye, eyewitness identifications. There's some things you can do to help lessen incorrect. When you deal with a white, let's restate that. When you deal with a person of one race who's identifying a person of another race, there's always mistakes. Always mistakes. All Mexicans look the same. All Asians look the same. All people from Croatia look the same. No, they do not. But if you don't spend time in the culture where other people come from, you can't discriminate somebody who's Korean or Chinese or Filipino, Malaysian. You can't do it. The more experience, the more time you spend in a country or with a group of people who have a cultural, ethnic characteristic, then you can get better. But cross-identification is not particularly reliable. Okay? All right. Thanks for staying late. See you Thursday. I'll put up more study guides later.